experiences of my life. And this is interesting because when you do interviews, it's pretty one-sided, and the guys are asking the same old questions over and over. But you guys, when you know you got a chance to ask somebody you want to talk to a question, you guys get clever. And it has been some interesting give and take with this. So we're going to go around the room and ask everybody, what you want to ask. I'll try to answer it if I can, and I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
What's your favorite acoustic guitar to play?
Gil, this is guitar geek stuff, so you gotta pretend like you're not hearing it. Yeah. But Gil gave me some stuff in the very beginning, and we've used a lot of stuff since, but the Gil stuff is just absolutely the most robust tone I think that's out there. So,
yeah. And could you play Heaven's Hung in Black, maybe?
It was part of the show when we first started. We had some problems with video stuff. The show morphed considerably. When we first started this tour, we had almost 50 songs we had tried to put into the show. Not that we were going to play all of them. We just didn't know what was going to work. And through attrition and natural selection, if you like, it got whittled down, whittled down, whittled down. Then we had a problem about 10 shows into the tour. And we had to take some stuff out and put some other stuff in. And it ended, like Ringo used to say, nothing like a good mistake, And it ended up, not by design, but it ended up being actually better than what we came up with initially. So I'll take it. Everybody seems to be happy with it. So we'll stick with it. Yes, ma'am.
We were wondering, how do you keep your voice so young? You sound as good or better than you did in your younger years.
That was a painful lesson to learn in 1983. There was a thing going around in early '83. There was a viral laryngitis people were getting. Everybody I knew had it, and I got it and didn't know I had it. When most people talk, they were like, sound like a seal with his throat cut. Well, because I was singing, my voice was stronger than most people. So I didn't know that I didn't hear it when I was talking. So I go into rehearsal, and I tried to sing, and I was pushing, and I started cracking. And I thought, I just need to get a little bit loose. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and it wasn't getting any better. And finally, I just stopped. This is what happened to me. 2 or 3 days went by, and I couldn't talk at all. So we're suspect I have a problem. So there was a guy named Ed Cantor. He was a voice specialist over Beverly Hills. He passed away about 2 years ago. But Ed, when most doctors' offices, you go in, they got their AMA certificates on the wall. Not Ed. Ed, when you walked into his office, floor to ceiling, all the way around all the walls, gold and platinum records, Sinatra, Stevie Nicks, Rod Stewart, you name it. I mean, he was the man. So we go in, he does a preliminary exam, and then he takes what I call E.T.'s finger. It's this flex tube thing with a light on the end of it. We run it up your nose, down into your larynx, and you start probing around, and there's a monitor where you can see what's going on. We looked at the right side. The right side was pink and normal looking. Everything looked great. We got to the left side, and it looked like bloody hamburger meat. And I had ruptured the entire left side of my voice. And he says, all right, this is serious. If you do what I tell you to do, I can probably get you through this. You'll more than likely never be the same, but I'll get you through this if you do exactly what I tell you. And he kept emphasizing that over and over and over. He says, first thing you're going to do is you're going to go for 9 weeks and you are not going to speak a word. If you speak, you will never sing again. You're going to get halfway through the 9 weeks. You're going to start feeling better. You're going to want to test it. If you test it, you will never sing again. You go to a restaurant, you take a pen and pad with you. The phone rings at your house, you let it ring. You do not speak. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. I mean, he put the fear of God in me. Now, 9 weeks don't sound like a long time, but when it's just you alone with your thoughts and the anxiety of wondering if it's ever going to come back, that's 9 years. And you have to totally readjust your life as to how you communicate with people. Little things like we're doing right now, you take for granted. You ain't doing it with that. So I get through the 9 weeks. I did everything he said to the letter. And I went back. He says, all right. He says, now we're going to start some rehab. He says, do you stretch before you sing? And I said, no. He goes, all right. When you're watching the Olympics, guys getting ready to do the 100-meter dash. Before the race starts, what are they on the side doing? I said, stretching. He goes, duh. He goes, that's what we're going to do from now on. We're going to start stretching before we do this. So I learned a series of things to do to get it loose. Basically what you're doing, you're getting blood in it before you start stretching. You're getting it warm. And that and just general maintenance. I mean, I don't drink much and I don't smoke. So if I take care of it, it takes care of me. But one of the things he did tell me, he looked, when he was doing the fiber optics exam, he looked at my voice and he says, you sing pretty loud, don't you? And I said, yeah, I guess. I go, how can you tell? He goes, I can tell by the texture of your voice. He says, I've seen enough of these throats, I know. He says, from the texture of your voice, he says, you don't have a sign of a node on your throat. If you don't have them by now, you're never going to have them. And he told me, he says, I just removed 6 of them from Natalie Cole's voice earlier this week, and she don't sing near the volume you sing. So I felt good about that. At least that was one positive thing, on top of this catastrophic results he had just given me. So I thought, well, at least that's one thing in my favor. So it's a long answer I'm giving you here to say that I learned any immortality, if I was to have any at all, was not going to be as a guitar player. I was never going to be ranked next to Jimi Hendrix. I'm a better guitar player than people give me credit for, but it doesn't matter. Anything I was ever going to have was right here. So I thought, well, it would behoove me to take care of it. And if I take care of it, I'll probably take care of it. And I did. Yes, sir.
Quick 2-part question. What was your first concert or sort of moment where you knew you wanted to be a rock musician? And then secondly, you spent a little bit of time with New York Dolls. What would you say influenced your music the most? Was it kind of David Bowie or a little kind of different sound?
My first concert, I was 4. Conway Twitty. My mother was from Houston. She was Southern girl. So she grew up with a country western around the house. But she was also a rock and roll fan. Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Elvis, all that. So that was always in the house. So we go, I'm 4 years old. We go, he's opening a department store down in Florida where we lived at the time. And I remember my mother was holding me. And we're about from me to you, away from the stage. And there was this woman that was in the very front row. And she went to our church. I mean, I knew who she was. I recognized her. And he bent down and he kissed her in between songs. She lost her mind. And I'm 4 and I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So a year before that, I'm with my mom. We're driving down the street. I'm in the back seat because she's got one of her friends with her. And this woman's in the front seat riding shotgun. And this woman's telling my mom about this guy. And these women had apparently gotten mad at him or something, and they started tearing his clothes off. And I'm back down 3, but I'm, just trying to piece together, and I'm thinking, what did this man do to make these women so mad, so angry? And she talks a little longer, and it's a 20-year-old Elvis Presley.
Nice.
Now I'm 3, and then I'm 4, and I'm starting to put these puzzles together. And I'm thinking, That's a good job. So, that too is a long, protracted answer. When you ask what got me started, I am dead serious. My first memory I have of anything in life is hearing Chuck Berry's Sweet Little 16.
Nice.
And I was sitting at the breakfast table with my mother and father. They were eating powdered donuts. I remember it like I'm talking to you right now. When I hear that song to this day, it has an unusual effect on me because I think it's because it's the first thing I remember. But it has this bizarre effect on me that somehow when I was that age, I didn't know what I was listening to. I just knew I liked it. You know, it was speaking to me. So, and as far as the dolls thing, I think a lot more has been made out of that than there should have been. I tell people it's really what got me in California, you know, because it's really the truth. I only did 2 shows, you know, so for me it was really the bulk that was getting me here. That's
Opening or playing with Kiss in '85, how was that tour and how did they treat you?
well, I've known the guys since, I was friends with Ace, you know, when they were first getting started. So, you know, having known everybody for a long time, it's kind of like old homeboy, you know, really. I mean, they had changed, but success changes everybody. You know, some for better, some for not so much. But it affects everybody. And it had, let's just say it was more business-like than it had been in the very beginning, but it was still cordial and pleasant. I mean, Gene and I talk, I understand him, you know, I mean, he gets a bad rap, you know, sometimes, but I know where he's coming from, you know, I can relate to him in a lot of ways, you know, so, like I said, it was pretty fun. That's it. My biggest fan in Mexico City.
Yes, absolutely. That was the first thing. And the second one, I really don't have any question. I just want to tell you that the first time I listened to your music, I was 12 years old. And now I'm
You're not 12.
no, 50 years old kid. That's what I am. And thank you for really love your music.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And, well,
I mean, this has been one of the great things, to the back and forth with everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that I've never really had the opportunity to do. You know, I got a bad rap because people didn't understand. I'm the kind of person that if you came up to me on the street, just the 2 of you guys, and you wanted to talk, I'd talk to you all afternoon. But if it's a group like this, and you all get around me at one time, I start doing this. You know, not because I'm afraid. Everybody starts talking all at once. And because I want to address you, I want to talk to you, but everybody's talking at once, my natural reaction is just pull away. You know, and people have interpreted that as me being standoffish or hard to get along with. And you guys are seeing right now, I mean, you ask me the right questions, I'll go all afternoon, you know, but because I want to give to you, if I can't give to you, it frustrates me. So I pull away.
Yeah, thank you, Blackie. I discovered Wasp when I was 14 years old, and when I was in the high school, everybody go to the school showing their LPs, and they show Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and I didn't like it. I need to have something by myself. So I discovered 2 bands, Motley Crue and Wasp. And when I arrived to the school and I said, look at this, I was the hero of the moment. So, because English is not my native language, I wrote something I'm going to read to you. Your mom is my brother, as you know. We're the biggest fans in Mexico. Your music was the soundtrack of our childhood and youth. My brother and I used to share the room during our childhood. And every night before we went to sleep, we were used to discuss about which tape we would listen while to go to bed. We used to discuss about listening Motley Crue or Scorpions, Judas or Maiden, Ozzy or Dio. But we always agreed when we choose Wasp. Thank you for making our childhood special.
Thank you for taking the time.
Just like two quick ones. Not having done the meet and greet before, leading up to the tour, was there a nervousness or an excitement, or what was your feelings about it? Like once you made that
Uncertainty,
decision.
because we didn't know how to do this. We'd never done it before.
Right.
I mean, Jay's never done it. You know, it's like, you know, we didn't know what to do, so we looked at other people's websites and we saw what they were offering. And quite honestly, the idea of charging people money to sign autographs, I detest that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it's wrong for everybody to do. If that's what somebody wants to do and they're happy with it, that's their business. I just don't like the idea of a person. For me to want to do this, I had to have something else that motivated me. So when we came up with the idea of doing this, when we sat down here, the first thing I said to you guys was, this is the fun part. You know, for me it is. You know, so that became, because we didn't know what anybody else was doing, we thought, okay, let's try to humanize it as much as we can. One of the things we have heard over and over and over, which was news to us, this is the best meet and greet we've ever done, you know, because no one has ever taken the time to do it. Well, we didn't know that. You know, we were doing what we thought you should do. So the ignorance on our part ended up being a really good thing, I guess, because we didn't have any preconceived notions of what they should be.
So it was very organic in that sense.
Yeah, you know, I mean, what I was just telling them, a bunch of people come up to you on the street, you can't address them, that's frustrating. You know, but this is organized, you know, and we can have some dialogue back and forth, you know, which for me is what it's all about, you know, and to not be able to have that dialogue is frustrating.
Well, thank you. Can I ask one more quick one? What influenced your, I guess, stance or change of stance with regards to playing piano? What led to you pivoting on that?
When you're 20,
But
you
now
say-
playing it again, though.
No, I understand. When you're 20 and you make a bold statement like that's on this, you can somewhat justify it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. When you're 50 or you're 60, does it still resonate? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I thought, all right, we need a hook. We need a way to reintroduce this. And it may seem obvious now, but it took a minute for it to hit me, and I thought, well, the song caused a huge stink. You know, why don't we talk about that? You know, it's like, you know, it ended up being like the nose on my face. You know, it was so obvious. You know, but you don't see it because it's so obvious. You know, and then when we came up with the idea of the whole thing, which is what you're going to see tonight. You know, it was just like, this is just too good. You know, and it was there all along, and you can't see the forest for the tree.
Right, thanks.
So you're in Ghoulies 2, Dungeon Master, Sword Kill, and the W.A.S.P shirt and Terror Vision. Was there like a special relationship between W.A.S.P and Empire Pictures who produced all of those?
Well, when we did Dungeon Master, Charles Band, there was a guy named Robert Colburn. He was the head writer for LA Times Entertainment Section. He comes out with, we were playing the Troubadour at the time, we were still a local band. And they did like a 2-page article on us in the calendar section. I mean, that's unheard of. And he went up, he says, this guy, Blackie Lawless, he's got the coolest name ever in the history of rock and roll. And he's going on and on. Well, Charlie's 5 years. So it just, it's one of those things you don't plan. It just kind of happens. This man.
What was your best experience and or craziest experience on the Sunset Strip? You could pick one.
When I'm doing these, the one thing I've learned is to give you the first answer that comes to my head. But I cannot do that.
To protect the innocent.
You would not like me.
I do have a follow-up
Well, you may
question.
not like me now, but I'm assuming you're here, so. Wow. if somebody had 10 kids and somebody asked them to pick which one's their favorite, something like that, you know. It was an unusual time. It was everything it was cracked up to be and more. But anything becomes normal if you do it enough. And it wasn't until we started getting away from it. Once we got signed and everybody went their separate ways, it's a little like high school, you know, where you think you're gonna hang together, but you don't, you lose touch. It was like that. And once we got on the road, we have 2 big wardrobe boxes that has drawers in them. And one of them that our drummer uses now was the underwear drawer. And that was garments that were flung from the chimney we carried. The crew would get creative with those things over a period of time. But that, I'm jumping forward here. Like I said, that's kind of an impossible question to answer because it became, when insanity becomes the norm, you don't even notice it anymore. I mean, I could tell you a story about the guy who was my best friend at the time, and we snuck into Doug Weston's office and broke into a $90,000 bag of cocaine. And Doug got on the phone and was screaming bloody murder, and we were laughing at him because we knew we could. And that's just, like I said, I've learned in these to kind of just talk about whatever comes to my head, but like I said, that's pretty much impossible. Yes, sir.
My real quick story. My first concert was you opening up for Kiss, the Asylum tour. And it was my first concert, and me and my girlfriend were 17, 16. We took Barton bus to get to the Cow Palace. You know, middle of February, cold. We got into the venue, and everybody was sitting down smoking cigarettes. We'd never been to a concert. We're like, oh, we can walk right up front. We got right at the front row. About 5 minutes later, lights went out, and you came up. You were right in front of me. Stage is about here. You're 6 foot tall, so 10-foot tall person in front of me. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And I saw the big severed heads behind you. Right? And then the next thing I know, I had a sharp pain in my shoulder. My girlfriend was ripping my arm out because she had turned around the other way. She had a ski jacket on, and she was punching people left and right and pulling me behind her. And I saw the rest of the show from the back.
Peace and love.
Yeah. She was freaking out because the ski jacket and the crowd, and we watched the rest of the show from the back of the venue. So.
And bludgeoning you in the meantime.
Just pulling my arm out of the socket, yeah. So
Cow Palace is a legendary venue.
Yes.
And for us, playing all those places was a huge treat because me being the Elvis fan that I am, I would go into venues and I'd look around and I'd think, shit, that man was in this room. And it's like, we played the Ryman Auditorium a couple of weeks ago in Nashville. That was Mecca.
Yep.
I mean, that's sacred ground. I'm standing there singing where they had just had Loretta Lynn's body about 2 weeks before us, right on that stage, having the funeral. Man, how do you not be moved by that?
Well, that's like Gene gave the eulogy at Chuck Berry's funeral. Yeah. He just happened to be in town, and they asked him to come up, and it's really touching.
Yeah, so all that stuff, I mean, it's surrealistic experiences. So,
right.
Like I said, whenever you get a chance to do that, if you're a historian, which I try to be, especially in music, it humbles me. And that's another thing about this experience. When you have people, that say, like they said, it's a soundtrack to their life and stuff, I think there's 1 or 2 ways you can go with that. You could get an inflated ego with it, or it can humble you. For me, this has been a very, very humbling experience, because I listen to the feedback that I'm getting from people here, and it's just like, I'm just an average guy, I'm a guy that worked hard, continues to work hard. I'm not the best at anything. I'm pretty good at a lot of things, but it's always been the tortoise and the hare syndrome with me. You know, like, you might beat me in a sprint, but I'll kill you in a marathon, you know, because I won't quit. But it's the work ethic, you know, so I know what the secret to my success is, and I know that I'm not Houdini, you know, I'm not pulling rabbits out of hats, you know, I'm just an average guy, you know, so to get this kind of stuff coming back, it's pretty cool.
You told me to ask you about the
Yeah.
Crimson Idol.
When well, it wasn't the Crimson, it was the Cow Palace.
Oh.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the record. Yeah.
The record, the signed record.
Those, oh man, I can't tell you the whole story right now. There was 5,000 of those that I autographed, and a bunch of them came up on the market afterwards, and they were not my signature. And so I can spot my own writing, you know. So, and it's odd too because when you showed me that, you know, I said when I'm doing these, I'm thinking about the first thing that I think about. I was here in San Francisco, I think it was 95, and one of my best buddies was Muhammad Ali's agent. So I got to know Muhammad a little bit. Well, I bought this pair of boots that supposedly he had worn when he fought Richard Dunn for the championship in Munich in '76. But it didn't have documentation, the boots. And anybody who collects sportswear review knows that's everything. But I looked at the boots, and the person that I was buying them from had pretty good improvements, so I took a chance. So Muhammad was up here doing a show, and I brought the boots up with me, and we were having breakfast. And I brought him in, he come in, he sit down at the table. The first thing he did is he looked at the bottom of the boots, and there was markings on it. Do you know who Bundini Brown was? He was his corner man. Bundini Brown cataloged everything that Muhammad ever did. And Muhammad looked at the bottom of the boots, and then he pulled the tongue back and looked inside. And he looks over at me and he goes, and I went, yes! You know, that $1,500 that I spent on those boots are now $25,000. So when you're showing me that, I flashed on that moment with him that day here in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Listen,
Yeah, Blackie, the last few years have been pretty tough for everyone, but we've lost a few people along the way. Bob Kulick and Frankie Benally. I was wondering if you'd share a couple of memories of those guys who are no longer with us.
Thank you.
it's difficult. Frankie was the first guy I ever met, the first night I was ever in Hollywood. I was 19. So our bond went way back. And the chances of people having success in that town are pretty slim. So for two guys to meet on the very first night and then have a lifelong relationship, an exceptional relationship with a guy who is exceptionally talented, and I'm talking about him, that's, the planets have to align for that to happen. Bob was a sponge. You know, he was one of those guys. He told me that when he was playing with Alice Cooper, he was working with Steve Hunter and Dick Wagner, and he told me, he says, I sucked up everything they showed. And Bob was a chameleon. He could emulate all kinds of things. And I was thinking the other day, I was looking at a map of Hollywood because I'm working on this book called Tales from the Square Mile, autobiography. Everything happened for 20 years in that square mile. You know, I starved for 6 years, but then we had some success. I built a studio right on the corner of Santa Monica and Vine, and that's where we recorded the Idols in the original Fort Apache. Hollywood forever. The cemetery is a block away. Bob's in that cemetery right now. Somebody would have told me, we're in there in the control room making that record and he's doing his tracks. Hey man, you're gonna be 100 yards down the street in a few years. So you ask me what goes through my head, that's what goes through my head.
Thanks for sharing.
You know, John Lennon said, life's what happens when you're making other plans. words that have been spoken. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What's your favorite song to play live?
That's equivalent to her question. The one that I'm enjoying the most right now is Great Misconceptions of Me.
Nice.
Because there's a part in the song where I'm not singing. When I'm singing, I don't see anything, I don't hear anything. I hear the snare drum and I hear me, and that's it. You know, you hear athletes talk about clear the mechanism, where you're focused 100% on what you're doing. I see people in the audience doing this, but I don't hear anything they do. Everything is in slow motion because you're really concentrating and focusing. So when I'm singing, I can't really enjoy it, you know. But when I'm not, sometimes I can sneak little moments where I can hear what's going on. When we first started doing The Idol, we did not use the orchestration like we use now. And it was kind of like the Who doing Live at Leeds where they were doing Tommy. It was just, you know, 3 instruments basically. But when we started using the orchestration, that changed everything. And I remember the first night we went in the studio and we had the orchestration. And it was like a religious experience. I mean, I heard all the strings and the horns coming up. I was hearing the record live for the first time like that. And like I said, it was like a surrealistic experience for me. So every night when we get to that point, it's after there's a bridge in the song. I don't know if you know what a bridge is, but usually it's verse, chorus, bridge. After that bridge, there's a little instrumental part. I walk to the front of the stage so I can hear what's coming out of the PA, and I just close my eyes and I listen to that part every night. And I'm thinking, wow, this is coming out of us. And it's kind of cool to be in the position. Yes, sir.
If you have time, I heard that you had a really good Cliff Burton story.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're probably talking about the time we were in Indianapolis. We were late for a show. And I assume this is the story you're asking about, because there's a few of them, but we were late, and it was this old VFW hall we were playing. And the dressing rooms and the bathrooms, everything was down in the basement. And it was just like Spinal Tap. You know, the maze where they're in Cleveland and they don't know where they are. Well, usually if you get there early enough in the day, you know, there's signs posted everywhere, stage, you know, with an arrow pointing telling you where to go, dressing room this way. Well, we didn't have time to do anything. And we were flip-flopping and closing. We closed one night, and the next night they closed. And there with his bass on. And he goes, Blackie, how do you get to stage? How do you get to stage? And I didn't know. I hadn't been up there yet. I had no clue. And I'm looking at him in the mirror, and I said, Cliff, I don't know. And he thinks I'm busting his chops. So he goes, oh, fuck you, Blackie, and he runs off. I hear the band, because you can hear everything right above you, right? I hear the band going to the first song. And about 2 minutes later, I hear the bass come. It took him that long to find his way to the stage. He's down there by himself. Listen, when we all started, there was a learning curve, you know, because there was 3 young bands and we didn't have the experience. We were coming across the Canadian border one day. We were up in Canada, coming back into the U.S. And so it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. There's 2 feet of snow on the ground. They make us get out to go through border check with our passports and all that stuff. So we go through, you know, everybody's shaking because you ain't half dressed and all that stuff, and you're sound asleep. So we go through, we get back on the bus, and we take off. We get about 45 minutes down the street. They're missing a guy. It's Cliff.
Oh, shit.
So if you're 45 minutes out, you're 45 minutes back. We pull up, he's standing there with his boxer shorts and a t-shirt on, in 2 feet of snow. They would not let him stay inside. He was freezing his ass off. You know, and it angered us when we saw that. But we learned a very valuable lesson. When that bus stops, a head count every time. Somebody, in our world, it's not like normal scenarios. Somebody's always sleeping, somebody's always awake. You know, there are no schedules like you know in regular life. So if somebody's sleeping in their bunk, you've got to look in there and see if you have to do a head count, because you don't want to go off and leave anybody. But these are all things we were learning as we were going. They didn't have, Metallica didn't have a tour manager because Rick Allen had just had his accident and lost his arm. Rick's brother was going to assist his brother while he's in the hospital, so they don't have a tour manager. Our tour manager is trying to tour manage both bands, but our tour manager's on the bus with us, not with them. So none of us knew to do head counts. You know, but these are all things you learn as you go. Yes, sir.
I don't have a question because like everything I've been thinking of has been answered so far. Maybe one around the corner there, but I think we all just want to thank you so much for having this experience with you, because you've been all to have this kind of like, I'm sure a lot of us been the same kind of meet and greets where it's just been kind of like on handshake, photo, and out the door.
They sounded like in-stores to us.
Yeah, but
and
it
we
is.
thought that was crap.
But this is a treat for us too.
Yeah,
It's a long
but
way.
I'm learning. I'm listening to what you guys are saying. Believe me, I'm doing a little market surveys here. Because you'd be surprised. There's a couple of questions that keep coming up over and over again, and it's been surprising to us, and it's been eye-opening. Listen.
Yeah, I don't want to bring up that subject, but I went to that Dallas show because you tell me.
Wasn't my fault.
I know. How could they have done that? So
Greed.
But weren't you guys supposed to play at the bomb shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a little touchy subject. There was, not for us.
Too soon.
There's some politics involved that I can't go into. Somebody, let's just say this, somebody did something they weren't supposed to do. It wasn't us. And that somebody had a falling out with the other party, and the venue got moved. We were extremely unhappy about it. Tickets were already on sale. The Texas shows in general were a debacle because the planning was not done the way it should have been. So I'll just leave it at that. Like I said, we were about 5 minutes from going on stage, and tour manager Taz comes on the bus. He goes, "You guys stay put. We got a problem." Now, we've been in those situations before. Those can get very dangerous because people can get very agitated. You put a couple of thousand angry people together, anything can happen. And we have been in the middle of those before, and they're not fun. You know, so we were debating whether to actually leave the venue, which we didn't, but we stayed put. But those can be volatile. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if you're looking into any bands that are coming up in metal right now that you're listening to that you're kind of keen on?
I don't really listen to a lot of stuff. I never listen to anything at home. I only listen to stuff when I'm in the car. But I tell people it's a little, especially if I've been in the studio all day, I'll listen to stuff that's unrelated to what we do. Motown, Elvis, you know, stuff like that. It's totally different than what you might think. But I'm a typical musician in the sense that for us there's only good and bad. You know, it doesn't matter the genre. The genres are names that people put on it so they can identify, but we don't do that. And to us, it's, like I said, it's just good and bad. Yes, sir.
I was with
Oh, no.
I was at them at Dallas. I just
You were? Okay. Sorry.
It's memorable.
It was my fault.
Well, first off, I just want to say I truly admire you for what I described as raw sincerity.
Now, all that money I paid you earlier today, I told you I wanted you to be more sincere when you said that. Thank you.
But,
I appreciate it.
kind of on the topic of, well, I was just thinking of still not black enough. I know from like the lineups and interviews it's
I was pretty jazzed about that. I went into Still Not Black Enough with a pretty bad attitude in the sense that I didn't think I could top what I had just done. And that's death. You know, and I was trying, I knew it was, and I was trying to get the idea out of my head. Trying, and I couldn't. And I didn't pick up a guitar for 6 months at that point. And to me, it was like a rattlesnake in the corner. I couldn't touch it. Well, I was out in Arizona. We were trying to buy some physiologists. And it's kind of like a chiropractor, but they work more with the muscles and the nerves. And they don't just crunch you. Well, he was doing, it's a process called muscle testing. Do you know what that is? All right, well, I'll show it to you in just a minute. But what it does is it gets into your subconscious. I want you to hold your arm out straight. And I'm going to take 2 fingers and I'm going to push your arm down, but don't let me push it down, okay? Okay, so you're strong. What's your birth-given first name?
Olivia.
I want you to say, my name is Olivia. Okay. No, resist. My name is Olivia. Okay. My name is Sharon. Say it. Yeah, say it. What happens, we're hardwired.
Yeah.
We're hardwired to tell the truth. When we recognize that we've said something that is not truthful, there's a temporary disconnect in the base of the spinal cord that feeds all of our muscles, and you'll go weak. This is not hocus pocus, this is neurological, it's a scientific fact. But it's also very interesting to use at parties, or if you've got a boyfriend that you've got questions about. This is truth serum. It's big time. Well, anyway, what he did, and I knew about this process because I had dealt with kinesiologists before. So he did the adjustment on me, and he says, "How you doing?" I said, so. He says, "What's bothering me?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "Well, let's find out." So we start doing the testing. You start asking yourself questions, and what you do is you start with a big circle of questions. And you try to start narrowing it down, until you get to the heart of what's really bothering you. And it's like quick psychoanalysis, but it's your brain telling you exactly what's wrong. So come to find out, I'm afraid of failure. That's why I don't want to pick up the guitar. If I don't pick up the guitar, I can't write. If I can't write, I can't fail. That's my subconscious talking. My conscious says, yeah, but if you don't pick up the guitar, you're going to fail, right? But the two always don't. Your subconscious, if you ever had anxiety attacks or anything like that,
right.
Okay, but that's your subconscious trying to protect you. This little technique I'm showing you here, you can get to the root of all those problems if you want to. I would caution you that sometimes what you discover about yourself you may not like. But in my particular case, at least I knew what I was dealing with. And once I found out what I was dealing with, then I could address it. But I didn't know what it was, so it was a process. But we, like I said, we circled the wagons. We finally figured out what was going on with me. And I was driving back to the hotel, and I got my fingers on the steering wheel, I'm listening to the radio, and I caught myself playing drums to whatever was going on the radio. I hadn't done it in months. And it's just like all of a sudden the sky was a little bluer because I had gotten to the truth of what was bothering me. And I've since discovered this in a lot of other musicians that have had successes, that they run into a wall after they've had a success because that's what their brain is doing to them. They're afraid to go back because they don't think they can outdo what they did before. It's a revealing process, but like I said, you can use this for lots of things in your life. Listen. Poverty.
What's the story of this?
We'll get a little more specific. Like when we started, or why did we start, or
why did you choose this name?
Oh, the name. We wanted a name that was controversial without really being controversial. I know that sounds like double talk. If you knew what the name meant, fine. If you didn't know what the name meant, that was okay too.
I have lots of things. Which one is correct?
We ain't sure about.
Yeah.
It's the best one. Think about it. But if there was anything that was remarkable about it, it was the periods. No band had ever used periods before. Other, Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP. Lots of names had been shortened, but they were not acronyms, they were the periods.
Yeah.
And we were the first band to do that, and it drove people crazy. What does this mean? And like I said, to this day, it still works real good. Yes, ma'am. Nothing?
Okay, so thank you again. This is so great. So with all of the rise of the love of the movie, Rock Band and Elvis, I've seen it many times now, and The Dirt, which is fiction. If they did a movie and called it Wasp, who would you choose to play you? Even if it was fiction. Because I know you're like.
I can't answer that.
Would you play you now as it went to
That kind of stuff.
You've done your acting?
Yeah. But you're talking about the Elvis movie. Yeah. If that kid Austin Butler don't win the Oscar for this, it's going to be the biggest crime.
Yeah.
I mean, that kid is unbelievable. We were in Sweden this past year when the movie came out. And we had a couple days off, and we went to see it. And I was like everybody else, because being a big fan, I'm thinking this is going to be another so-so movie. I was blown away.
Yeah, I went in with this.
Yes. Well, you're talking about a supernatural human being. How do you emulate somebody that's got that many gifts? He had gifts. I'm talking about Elvis. Yeah. He had gifts that people not really. We all humans do it. I'm guilty of it too. We listen with our eyes instead of our ears. And I defy anybody in this room to hear a song on the radio of any band you like and not conjure up some sort of visual image of it. Whether it's an 8x10 photo or a video you saw or a live gig, we all do it. Well, he was cursed with that. So musically speaking, and some people may think this is sacrilege, what I'm getting ready to say. I'm a huge Beatles fan. Huge. I know a lot about that band. It's like John Kosh, who did 8 album covers for us. First album cover he ever did was Abbey Road. The second one he did was Let It Be. He knew that band well. John Lennon brought him to America. I'm privileged to all kinds of stories that most people will never hear. So I'm a huge fan. But what I'm getting ready to say is some people might think it's sacrilege. Elvis, when it comes to arranging music, was as good as they were. And nobody really ever gives him credit for that. If you listen to any of the demos of the songs that he got, they don't sound anything like when they would go through his filter and come out the other side. Willie Nelson said one time when Elvis did a song, my song was done. Ain't nobody gonna do it again, or have the courage to do it. So he had these extraordinary supernatural gifts. And for Austin Butler to try to take on that role, you gotta be kidding.
He did a good job. I know
Good.
you have his bed too, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That is the coolest. I just saw that before we came here.
I had a chance to buy Elvis's house in Palm Springs in 2005. The house that they had when him and Priscilla got married. And the guy that had the house had the bedroom furniture in it. And I bought the bedroom furniture from him. I should have bought the house, but I already had 2 at the time, and I was getting killed with mortgages. But it's cool because we have the bed, the chest of drawers, the end tables, the lamps, and all that stuff, and It's all black and gold, everything.
This 70s.
But we put blood red carpet, like this shirt, on the floor, and you would think that carpet would be loud. It works so well with that furniture. I mean, it is really, really. And everybody, we had it in a guest house, and everybody that comes over, wants to sleep in that bed.
And so your uncle Ryan Durham, I know you were really young when he was in the major leagues. Right? Did he have any influence on you becoming a pitcher? And how close were you to actually?
It kind of runs in the family because my other uncle, his name is John, my dad's brother. Ryan was a cousin once removed to my dad, but my dad's brother John and Ryan look like twins. My Uncle John threw just about as hard as Ryan did. And, I mean, these guys were hitting 100 miles an hour back then. And he had a chance to play for the Tigers too, but he just didn't, he wasn't motivated enough to do it. So, like I said,
no real questions. Want to thank you though. This is like a night to remember, a bucket list. So it's like
I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
For me, it's like meeting people, but
I got to work, guys.
Thank you.